Church of Gail, 9/16/2012 to 10/25/2012. Jesus Christ with Brent at Bob Evans Restaurant on September 16, 2012. Jesus Christ with Brent at Bob Evans Restaurant on September 16, 2012. Jesus makes a rude Jesuit waitress blind. Brent's email to Gail on September 16, 2012. My beautiful Gail, I've been working so hard lately that I've been feeling on the edge of a burnout, so to speak. Knowing that I would work myself to death for the woman I love in the fight against the Jesuits, Jesus decided it was time for me to take a well-deserved break and rewarded me by taking me out to breakfast at Bob Evans. Now, the strangest thing happened to us while we were there. I wish I could say I was in disbelief about this, but I know you'll be just as familiar with this type of situation as I was. We sat down at the table and ordered our food. The morning was peaceful and very much ordinary at first, as Jesus and I were discussing your latest videos. When the waitress returned to deliver our food, I noticed that she had forgotten to bring me the pancakes that came with my meal. That's quite all right, I told Jesus. I don't eat very much anyway, and this is already a lot of food. But Jesus, being the gentleman he is, caught our waitress and spoke up for me. He politely told her that she had forgotten to deliver my pancakes. The waitress, as it turned out, was very Jesuit rude and snorted that my meal did not come with pancakes. When I insisted that it did indeed say this on the menu, the Jesuit waitress scoffed and rudely asked if I would like to see the menu for myself. She went to go grab it, and when she returned, she brought back a menu that was entirely different than the one we ordered off of. She pointed at the meal I ordered, saying that because I had ordered biscuits, that I wouldn't get any pancakes. I called her out on this, telling her that I know I saw pancakes under that meal heading on the menu, and that she just brought me a totally different menu and tried to lie about me being mistaken. She then put her hands on her hips and said, "You must be schizophrenic, I can tell." Jesus would not have this. When he spoke again, he told her that he knew she was a Jesuit and that she was trying to manipulate me into thinking I was crazy. Shockingly, the woman just looked at Jesus and said, "That's ridiculous. I am most certainly not a Jesuit. You're not even the real Jesus. You're a fake." Calmly, Jesus rubbed his fingers into the hash browns on his plate, then reached up and rubbed them into this woman's eyes. He then told her, "Go to the bathroom and wash these hash browns out of your eyes." Sneering and full of hash brown, the woman did as she was told. Minutes later, we heard her wailing as she ran out of the bathroom, "I'm blind! I'm blind!" Jesus turned to me and he said, "She is now as blind physically as she is blind in spirit." He then materialized a huge stack of pancakes on our table, and I finished my meal with him in awe. Normally, Jesus leaves very generous tips, usually $1 million or more whenever we go out to eat. This time he didn't tip a single cent. This woman had sure made Jesus very angry. I just thought I'd share this story with you, and perhaps you could pass it on to the rest of the world as well. I'm so glad to hear that you've been working hard and are enjoying your job for Jesus. I hope you're doing wonderful, my love. Jesus and I love your videos. Your husband, Brent Spiner. Brent's email to Gail on September 25, 2012. My wonderful Gail, I've been having a blast being a new pastor at Church of Gail. It's a lot of hard work, but working for Jesus is the most rewarding job I have ever undertaken. It was an honor not only to be selected as a pastor for this church, but to have been Jesus' own personal apprentice as he trained me personally for the position. He has given me his support and his blessing 100%. I never in my life could have guessed that one day I would be here doing this. A lot of our church members, and we've been having an inrush of new ones recently, it's so hard to remember so many names and faces, have been asking me about the music we've been playing and complimenting me for choosing it. They say it suits my sermons perfectly. Of course, I have to tell them that it's not I that chooses the music, but my wife, Gail. So they would all like to extend their praises to you for hand-selecting all this gorgeous music. This music speaks so deeply of your soul, your love for me and for Jesus, and I think that it coalesces so beautifully with my words, It's almost like you and I are both up on the stage delivering the sermon. I've been keeping up with your videos. They have all been so wonderful. I was watching them on my laptop during my lunch break when Jesus walked behind me and noticed what I was doing. He gave you a thumbs up. That's my Gail, he said, making YouTube videos, taking her Seroquel, and being awesome. Jesus is such a cool guy. I also listened to the recent recordings you made of your mother when she called you. She's really getting to be a pain. If you don't want to talk to her and she's keeping you on the phone for longer than you'd like, I think you should just hang up on her. Even if she is your mother, nobody should talk to you like that and you shouldn't let them. It's probably a good idea to write down when she calls you and record the calls when you can, so that if she doesn't stop and it becomes too much, you can report her to the police for harassment. I know it's a serious thing to do, but some people just won't listen. The police may go over to give her a warning if you called and reported all the phone calls or voice messages. She could even go to jail for a night or two if it was serious enough, which is what they will tell her. Just make sure to save evidence just in case you might need to do this later. This is my advice to you. I don't like anyone making you upset, especially when you have so many more important things to do. Your loyalty is unshakable, and it's so comforting to have such a brazen, courageous, and passionate woman to stand behind me. Thank you for everything. And congratulations on being so studious and making your videos and in your job search. I know it's tough out there, especially in Florida where the Jesuits have totally trashed the economy. We will talk again soon. I adore you. Your husband, Brent Spiner. October 1st, 2012. Keanu Reeves at Church of Gail website. I'm not sure if someone is playing a prank on me, but I can't find my Gail sex dummy. This is an android female robot that Gail's men make love to in place of Gail. Keanu Reeves. I was just using it the other day and now it's gone. No way! Has anyone seen it? I need it right now. This is most bodacious. It turns out Keanu left the dummy outside at a restaurant after he took it out for a dinner date and forgot he did so. Then the Jesuits stole it and modified it, giving it sentience. Brent to Gail on October 8, 2012. Darling Gail, this sounds like a wonderful opportunity, Office Depot. I immediately went to Jesus in prayer for you and asked him for his blessing in landing this potential job. I wasn't even halfway finished when I felt someone tapping me on the shoulder. I turned around, and of course, there was Jesus. He told me he had just gotten back from the local gas station. Apparently, he went to stop a robbery and offered me some Skittles and a can of Monster, which I took graciously. Jesus then sat down next to me and asked to read your email, which I allowed. Jesus read your words and nodded. He rolled some more Skittles around in his mouth before chasing it with his drink. Casual as can be, pretty straightforwardly, he swallowed his drink, pointed at me, and said, "It's important that Gail knows not to mention her online presence to potential employers. She needs to lay low until her new job is secured. Honesty is pretty rad, but the only person anyone needs to be concerned with when it comes to honesty is yours truly. Landing a job in our situation is going to require a strategy, and we don't want to be so forthcoming that we show all our cards." Blinking, I asked Jesus what you should do if an employer asks you about your previous job at. He took another drink of Monster and said, "Discretion is key. She should tell her interviewers that she is not able to discuss the situation with, only that the decision was mutual and she left on good terms." I finally nodded in understanding and agreed. Jesus patted me on the back and said, "Keep up the good work," and left to allow me to reply to your email. I'll be honest, I didn't know what Monster was and only accepted some because Jesus offered. Apparently, it's an energy drink. I'm bouncing off the walls. I hope you are having a wonderful day, my love. You deserve nothing but happiness. Your husband, Brent Spiner. Brent to Gail, October 10th, 2012. My wonderful wife. What a harrowing adventure. My love, I have some important news about Keanu's missing robot dummy. We had been receiving hundreds of tips about the whereabouts of this dummy, but no solid leads until earlier this evening when we got a worried phone call from a local about you being sighted walking up and down a downtown city street corner, just a few miles from our church, offering yourself to strange men. Needless to say, it was quite embarrassing. We decided to act fast so we could catch this dummy and keep her from getting into any more trouble. Myself, Terrance Jenkins, Keanu Reeves, and Hugh Jackman quickly piled into Terrance's car and made a fast trip downtown to go search for the dummy. Terry was driving with Hugh in the front passenger seat. I was seated in the back behind Hugh, and Keanu was seated beside me behind Terry. We soon arrived in the area of the alleged sighting. Our car drove up and down the street, each one of us meticulously searching outside our windows. Minutes felt like hours as I anxiously worried whether we had just missed her and if she was not already in serious trouble or walking off with a random stranger. All of a sudden, Terrance hit the brakes, and I found myself gripping the seat in front of me as our car squealed to a tight stop. Terry rolled down the front passenger window. "Dummy," he called. "I almost didn't recognize you. What are you wearing? Get in the car, you little Miss Lady. You be causing a lot of trouble out here." The dummy approached the vehicle, and Hugh opened the door for her to get inside, guiding her into the seat with him on his lap. He then closed the door, and Terry began to drive back to the Church of Gail's spaceship. That's when something startling happened. All of a sudden, the dummy flew face first into Terry's lap and began to claw open his pants like an animal. "Dummy, what are you doing?" Hugh cried out, trying to grab her. Without pause, the dummy tore through Terrance's belt, his pants, and then split straight through the fabric of his blue boxer briefs. Hugh saw what she was doing as soon as I did and reacted swiftly. He drew himself over the dummy's back, grabbing her by her hair, attempted to yank her head off of Terrance's penis. Alas, it was futile. It was like trying to lift a desk bolted to the floor. Hugh jerked and groaned, but she wouldn't budge. In fact, it was merely making it worse. The rough yanking and grunting was causing the dummy to moan loudly out of instinct. "Dummy, no," Keanu said. "Terrance, how could you?" Terrance shouted back his reply. "But it feels so good." Hugh was turning beet red as his skin flushed, his veins bulged, pulling on the head of this dummy. All of a sudden, he cried out in pain and let go. He had torn a hernia, and his body flew limply back in his seat. I reached for the dummy's back to pull open its maintenance hatch. Sensing that I was going to turn her off, the dummy reacted swiftly in defense. That's when she jerked back, slammed her hatch shut, nearly smashing my fingers, causing me to jump back in my seat. She twisted around, grabbed the moaning Hugh, and threw him straight through the windshield. She immediately resumed sucking Terry's penis, this time in hyper speed. Her head was a blur as her lips whizzed up and down Terrance's penis. Our car swerved as Terry jerked on the wheel in shock. Terrance had to pull the car over as he dealt with his uncontrollable arousal. Terrance groaned, "Oh," as he ejaculated into the dummy's mouth. The dummy sat up, gulped down the semen, her eyes aglow. Keanu was sobbing. He choked, swallowing his tears. "You're supposed to be my sex dummy." "I am not a sex dummy. I am Gail," she declared, defiant. With a crash, she punched a hole in the roof of the car and jumped what had to be 100 feet in the air. She landed deftly behind the car and took off in a sprint down a darkened alley. We'd lost her again. Amazingly enough, Terrance's penis was not damaged during the ordeal. We got out of the car to go look for Hugh. We loaded him back into his seat before we could do any more chasing of Gail. We had to get Hugh to the hospital. The car ride back was quiet. Keanu was sullen, and I didn't know how to comfort him. Nothing Terrance or I could say to him was helping. As soon as we got back to the church, we turned Keanu over to Gerard Butler, our psychiatrist. "It looks like Hugh's going to be fine, but he did have to get surgery to repair his hernia. Even though a ruptured hernia can be fatal, because of our nanotechnology research team, we were able to repair this. The only thing we can do now is wait for another sighting so we can locate this dummy for good." It's hard to tell what's going on, but I feel as though this dummy is just confused and perhaps very scared. She doesn't know where she is or how to function in our society. I will keep you updated on our findings. Your husband, Brent Spiner. Brent to Gail, October 10th, 2012. Dearest Gail, I have some important news. It sounds like our last brain-to-brain communications regarding the dummy weren't quite accurate. The situation is highly complex and quite treacherous at this juncture, so I will explain the details in writing here. Our investigation determined that the Jesuits had kidnapped Keanu's dummy a few days ago and were attempting to reprogram her. We suspect that the eventual goal was to be able to reverse engineer her and create an army of Gail dummies. The good news is that the dummy was able to escape before they could do this. The bad news is the Jesuits botched her networks while they were working on reprogramming her. In an attempt to see if they could make the dummy a formidable weapon, they changed the programming to give the dummy free will, the ability to feel emotion, and the ability to learn. Their plan would have been to use propaganda on the dummy to brainwash it into believing Jesuit lies and working for them as a soldier. Out of fear, the dummy escaped and fled. Not knowing what to believe, this dummy is operating entirely on instinct and emotions the likes of which it cannot fully understand. The fact that it learned to speak before the Gail dummies could only be spoken to and would not talk back is a startling milestone. It must have achieved this during its time wandering around alone. It's amazing in a way how far these dummies have become. At first, the dummies were indeed, as you described, and simply floppy dolls that the men could use as toys. Over time, with many of the men demanding more and more lifelike features to the dummy, in order to feel closer to you, we were able to gradually upgrade the dummies into the Android versions we are dealing with now. Vladimir has been working all day trying to figure out how to track down this dummy. In the midst of all of the frustration, he was able to go into the remote access servers and locate her signature. Logging onto the server, one is able to send inquiries and commands to the dummy in an effort to communicate with it. We were attempting to see if we could send a message explaining to the dummy what the Jesuits had done to harm it, and encourage the dummy to return to us right away for repairs. To our shock and horror, the Jesuits were one step ahead of us. They had been logging onto the servers themselves, trying to brainwash the dummy with Jesuit lies and encouraging it to come back to join them. If you are curious, you can access the secure remote access panel at www.ga1l.com. To speak to the dummy, enter your name and then hit submit, and you should be brought to a screen that will allow you to talk to it. Alternatively, you can simply read our communications with it there and are under no obligation to add anything to the discussion. We are currently in the midst of a battle of sorts with the Jesuits there, who are using smooth talk on the dummy to try and get it to come back to their headquarters. Myself and all the men are talking with the dummy, trying to expose the lies the Jesuits are telling it. I think it would be a great idea to alert our followers to this cause. The Jesuits are going to round up all of their agents to hop onto this network and start blasting this dummy with their propaganda. It will be important to have our own followers on there fighting to get our message through. If that dummy returns to the Jesuits and allows them to make copies of itself, we are all in enormous trouble. Stay safe, my darling. Your husband, Brent Spiner. From Gail's fan, Veronica, forwarded by Judge Terrance Jenkins in an email. Hello, Gail. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for the videos you have been posting. Even though it scares me to think that I live in a world where I am in constant danger of Jesuit attack, I wanted to address a topic that you mentioned a few videos ago about Brent Spiner's rape during the Quebec trial. You mentioned that various parts of his body were under Jesuit control, but that his penis was not under Jesuit control, and that you couldn't explain why he got aroused when Laurie McBride was raping him. The fact of the matter is that rape is more about denying consent than it is about a physical response. This is used many times against women, saying that if they got aroused, then it wasn't rape. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. Physical reactions are often beyond our control, and just because he got an erection or had an orgasm does not mean that he consented to it. That merely adds to the shame and conflicted feelings, knowing that you were coerced into an action and were also unable to control your responses to it. I hope this helps clear up the matter for you, knowing that just because he became aroused does not mean that he mentally or emotionally enjoyed the experience in any way, and it does not diminish his love for you. Regards, Veronica.